Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Badass Podcast, where we talk about Batman the Animated Series. This is Badass Beyond Season 2. My name is Clay McCormick, and with me, as always, is Sean Murphy. How you doing, Sean?
Dude, so I was at San Diego
Mm-hmm.
with you and my wife,
Yeah.
and we were on what, 14th floor or something? And
Yes, I think so.
getting down, when everyone tries to leave a hotel at the same time, for us, all 8 elevators were jammed. So
Yeah,
you'd wait
yeah.
5 minutes, a door would open, and it's just a mob of people. So you're like, I'll wait for the next one, I'll wait for the next one. So finally, the door opens up, and a woman inside yells, "There's too many people, you can't come in." And I look at the front of the elevator, and I see Jim Lee.
Oh, really?
And he's quite a bit shorter than everybody else, and he's got his hand in his pockets like he's terrified of all the people behind him
Mm-hmm.
because someone like him, gets recognized very easily. Keep in mind too, he is my boss, and he knows me, and I know him, and we lock eyes, and Jim's like, "All right, Sean, come on, we got space, get in here." So I kind of hesitantly go towards the crowded elevator, and the woman who yelled at starts yelling at Jim. She's like, "Oh, thanks. Now I feel like a fucking asshole." And so I get in, and Jim and I are at the front, and this is like it's like a cartoon. Him and I face forward, the door slowly shut, and Jim and I are like facing the metal with the crowd behind us. And this woman just keeps badgering Jim. She's like, "It's really busy, and I can't believe you did that. Now I feel like a jerk." And Jim turns around halfway, and he's like, "There's room in here for one more. People have to go down." And he sort of lays it out. And I look at her, I'm like, he's my boss. If he tells me to get on the elevator, what am I going to do? So as we go down, I'm thinking, wait a minute. Clearly he's hanging out with these people. They're just fucking with him because who yells at a perfect stranger like this? Like these are all people that are with Jim.
Sure.
So I start to relax. So we get to the bottom, elevator's open, and Jim's like, "All right, man, I'll see you later." He takes off. He's not with those people. It's just some random woman screaming at Jim Lee. And the irony of the story, if there is any, is the bag she was carrying was a Jim Lee bag. It was
Yes, of
filled with
course, yeah.
Jim Lee artwork. It was the bag that the convention gives out as like
Uh-huh.
backpacks for people. And I don't know what kind of justice there is in the world, but for Jim Lee, there ain't none.
Yeah, I must have missed that. I think I left. Was that when you were leaving on Sunday?
One of the many times. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the many
I
times.
I thought I told you at the show, and I'm like, dude, I got a great opener for our podcast. I
I
got a good Jim Lee
I'm
story.
sure you did, but that was like 2 months ago at this point. Which,
Yeah.
we're sorry it's been so long between seasons, but things
Yeah.
get busy in the off season. But yeah,
And we will talk about San Diego and Red Hood at the end of this podcast,
sure,
right?
absolutely, yeah. But yeah, we are
Tack it
back
on.
with Batman Beyond Season 2. This is a longer season than the last one. The last one was only 13 episodes. This one is 25, so we'll get a few more episodes out of it here.
Nice.
But the first episode today, we'll be talking about Splicers and Earthmover, and I'm pretty excited to talk about both of these for different reasons. But we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back with Splicers.
They call it splicing, the new high-tech teen rage that has taken Gotham's youth by storm. But outraged parents and lawmakers call the use of genetic animal augmentation a crime against nature. Some say it's a matter of choice.
Splicing is like establishing myself as an individual, just like all my friends.
Yeah, right, you tell him that. That's right.
At the center of the controversy is the director of the Chimera Institute, Dr. Abel Cuvier.
I want to assure everyone that splicing is safe, reversible, and more importantly, utterly beautiful. I was the first test subject, and as you can see, I'm perfectly fine.
Perfectly creepy is more like it. Him and that whole splicing fad.
This is no simple fad. Something bad will come of this splicing. Something we'll most likely have to clean up.
Okay, Splicers, directed by Kurt Gaeta and written by Evan Dorkin and Sarah Dyer. Evan Dorkin, the name jumped out at me from the screen because I know him as a comic artist, but the only thing I know him from is Milk and Cheese, which is a comic that I saw everywhere in the 90s but have never actually read.
I feel that way about Zot, Z-O-T.
Oh, I don't know that one.
I used to dive into the long boxes looking for Zorro as a kid.
Mhm.
So I get to the Z, and there was no Zorro, but there's plenty of fucking Zot around.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah,
Zot.
yeah. it up later.
Yeah,
I couldn't
Milk
tell
and
you what it's about. I just know that he doesn't have a sword.
Milk and Cheese occupied that same space in my mind as a young comic book collector. As I think it was a little bit more prevalent than Scud the Disposable Assassin, but it was kind of the
yeah.
same place where it's like, Image Comics is independent comics, and then you're like, no, there's other stuff that's more independent than Spawn. It's not really as independent as they make it sound. Like Milk and Cheese and Scud, and I assume Zot, whatever that is a little bit more independent. But Milk and Cheese was all over Wizard. I remember seeing them all over Wizard. And
Yeah, you're right.
yeah, but it was not something I ever read because I don't know, I guess I didn't find anthropomorphic dairy products that interesting.
Yeah. I just sent you a picture of the cover of Zot! Exclamation point. Um, I think it might be is it a Scott McCloud comic? Getting it wrong. Whatever. But yeah, does that look familiar at all, or is it too low grade?
What did you send it to me on?
Oh, I just uploaded it onto the Discord here.
Oh, I'm not seeing it. I'll just look it up real quick.
Oh,
No,
there
that
it
does
is.
not look familiar at all.
All right. Well,
Yeah, I'm not
there it
familiar
is.
with that one. Yeah. Huh.
But I'm with you. I remember technically, yes, Image Comics is indie comics, but come on, right?
Yeah, Image
You know what I
Comics
mean?
is Image Comics is indie comics the way Sam Adams calls themselves an independent brewery. And it's like, come on, you guys are like the biggest. You're like number 3 on the entire East Coast. You're not a craft brewer anymore.
Yeah.
You know.
You mean indie comics didn't have uh government workers to lobby the government to change the official definition of microbrew to include the billion-dollar company like
Uh-huh.
Sam Adams,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is sold in like international. I go to fucking Paris and I see Sam Adams on tap.
Craft brewery, man, microbrewery.
Yeah.
It's a
I think
local
they
small
did.
company.
I think legally they did change the lobby. They did change the rules of what is considered a microbrew because back in the 90s there was like 8 and Sam
Right.
Adams is one
Right.
of them. Now there's like 1,000 and Sam had to fight to remain all folksy. If you're in Boston and you listen to like terrestrial radio at all, you remember those Sam Adams commercials where they're like very folksy and it's like,
Uh-huh.
"Oh gosh, shucks, I'm just Sam Cooke. I'm just this regular guy like you working in a brick building." And
Mm-hmm.
they kind of sell you on that bullshit. But if you know what you're talking about, you know that they're a very wealthy organization.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to keep up appearances to sell your crap. Not a
And on their
Sam Adams fan
commercials,
myself, but
they also on the commercial show the same guy with a giant red beard near these copper vats. And I'm sure that's where they might have started making the beer, but there's like a hermetically sealed facility somewhere in the Midwest at this point. Like
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not like your great grandfather's brewery like they want you to believe.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Man, you
Well,
and I are not fans of Sam Adams, huh?
no, I don't know. I just never, what the thing is with Sam Adams for me? It's every one of their beers tastes exactly the same. Like it has the same base or something to it. And I just do not like the taste of that base. So
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. And also
Yeah.
for all of the other reasons that we just listed off. But
Yeah.
what I am a fan of, segue, is this episode of Batman Beyond, Splicers. I think we're off to a pretty good start, at least as far as I'm concerned. What happens in this one is a new body modification trend called splicing, combining human DNA with that of animals, is taking Neo Gotham's fashion world by storm. While the DA wishes to have it completely outlawed, as it is causing a rise in aggressive behavior, Dr. Abel Cuvier, I don't know how it's pronounced. He's fake, it doesn't matter. The creator of the process insists that the procedure is safe. However, Batman soon discovers that Cuvier is up to no good as he is working towards attacking the DA in hopes of silencing him. Actually, that tangent about Sam Adams, not entirely irrelevant to what we're talking about, because this is also about a big businessman trying to stop the government from getting in the way of what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, man. Hey, side note too, Barbara is married to the DA. Isn't that kind of a conflict of interest for both of them?
I don't yeah, you would think it might be. I don't know how
Yeah.
that works. I don't know what the deal
Yeah.
is with that.
If the DA has to work with police to get approval for X, Y, and Z, and his wife runs the police department, I feel like in real life he should resign. Not that he did anything wrong, but if you really love this woman, you want to have everything nice and separate and you know,
Yeah.
separate powers of government, whatever, then you really can't be married to her.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I never thought about that. Is this? I can't remember
Yeah.
if this is the first time. I don't think it's the first time that they've shown that those two are married, but I can't remember.
So we've seen them before, I think maybe in the Mr. Freeze episode, because I made a comment about Barbara's interracial marriage and how I
Oh,
thought it
sure,
was cool. But
sure.
I don't know if we knew he was the DA. Yeah, of course, I'm gonna notice the racial stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
This
Um,
woke Batman Beyond. Can you believe it, folks?
I can't believe it. They moved it into the future. Nobody can relate to the future.
I will say they did call a few things. They call the people that aren't splicing norms,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of like us calling people who aren't into comics normies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there was a couple other things too where I was like, oh yeah, they kind of predicted the future here.
Well, it's funny because I was part of me was kind of hoping that this was going to go a bit of a different. I knew it wasn't, but my part of me was kind of hoping it was going to go a different way. Because as soon as I saw all these news reports about your kids are there's a new fad taking over the teens. It's called splicing. What it means for your son, and I was like, well, these things usually aren't as bad as people seem to think they are,
Mm-hmm.
and B, as widespread as they claim. It's usually just scare
Right.
journalism. But obviously, you can't. I mean, you could do that, but it wouldn't be
Yeah.
as interesting as actually having an evil scientist turning people into animal monsters. But
Yeah, there's a bit difference here than like eating Tide Pods and stuff. Well, that's probably
yeah.
just as dangerous.
Well, I found it so funny because when Bruce is like grumbling about watching the stuff on the news, grumbling about it, the first thing I thought was like, come on, Grandpa, this isn't as bad as you think it is. You're just out of the times, man. You're out of touch. But
he thinks it's the next vaping. He thinks that this is a major plague for our children,
right.
which vaping might actually have been, honestly, or cigarettes for that matter.
Yeah, yes. I you're probably right. I don't have the numbers on that, but yes, most likely.
But like you said, a lot of the scare of D&D and all that shit back in the day, there's all kinds of things that parents get worked up about that end up being nothing. So maybe it could have been one of those things.
Yeah.
I take your point.
Fortunately, I guess it's not, because I guess it's a lot more interesting to watch a bull man voiced by Ice-T fight Batman. So
What I noticed about Ice-T's voice, he only has one volume,
Yes.
and one way of speaking.
Yes.
Can't change this if he even possibly tries.
yes, I didn't catch it at first because I wasn't like looking for it, but then the next couple lines he had, I literally said out loud, "Is that Ice-T?"
Yeah, when you hear that voice, you know he's gonna be in the rest of the episode because Ice-T needs to get paid.
But yeah, so this is a story about a mad scientist / businessman who is turning impressionable youth into half human, half animal hybrids. This is not the first time we've seen this on Batman or
Right.
Batman the
Tiger,
Animated
Tiger.
Series. Yep, Tiger, and also technically, the first episode, Man Bat on leather wings, is involved with
Oh,
that, and also Moon of the Wolf.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I will say, I think I can pretty confidently say this is the best one of those episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few tweaks I would make to give it a 5,
Yeah.
but to skip to the end, I am gonna go 4. But I'm also gonna say, I mean, the last handful of episodes I've given 3s, and I feel like, all right, there is a such thing as a 4 in Batman Beyond. This has got to be it.
I think
A
so
Batman
too.
Beyond 4 is different than a TAS 4.
Yeah,
This is
I
in my
agree.
mind, though.
Well, I also think it's what's interesting about it is I kind of think they do. It's still pretty. It still feels short, but it didn't feel incomplete.
Right.
Because I think they did more with the time that they had, as far as like, if not specific plot, but just the way that they worked their way through the story and the ideas that they presented were pretty interesting.
Right.
Yeah, like the whole idea of this thing being a fad that the kids are into is way more interesting to me, and makes more sense, frankly, in a future setting than it did in Batman the Animated Series, where they're just some crazy guy turning Catwoman into a leopard lady for no reason.
Right. So I actually thought of that too. Because one of the girls in this show was turned into a cat, and I thought, man, what if she escaped and she became Catwoman?
Mm-hmm.
For that matter, why don't you have a whole rogues gallery based on animals? Take a you splice a hyena into someone and he's the Joker. You splice a, I don't know, jellyfish into someone and he becomes Clayface or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. That would be a cool. That would be great as Batman Beyond villains. I think that would make a lot of sense and be pretty cool.
Yeah.
This
And
guy.
then I don't think we ever got an ending on Selena Kyle in this show, unless it's in Justice League and I didn't catch it.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I don't even know. Does she show up in Batman Beyond? I don't think she does. Does she?
No, I don't think she does.
Huh. That's too bad.
Yeah. But when we do a White Knight thing for her one day, we can get into it.
Yeah, she will turn everybody into actual animals.
Or wrestlers, if you're writing it.
Or wrestlers who are actual animals.
I think that's redundant. Have you ever seen wrestling? They're all animals.
Oh, that's
that's
unfair.
why they're awesome.
That's unfair.
That's why they're awesome.
But yeah, there's a lot of kind of stylistic callbacks between those other episodes, and Terry gets essentially literally turned into Man-Bat.
Yeah.
But what I found actually really funny about this, because the one story beat that kind of stood out to me that I couldn't totally reconcile was how Bruce just had the fix for this ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, well, I guess the argument is probably that this is all very similar to those other 3 times he's dealt with this. So he just assumes that it's the same shit. And so he's got the antidote on hand.
Yeah. If they had a line where he's like, I think this is my first time dealing with transmorphic bipedal human beings, think again.
Yeah. Yeah, I was
shorten that a bit.
I was surprised that they didn't throw something like that in there. He just like is ready with the dart gun when Terry comes
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, considering how long it took them to find a vaccine for COVID, it's nice that Bruce can crack the code in 10 minutes in his super sweet laboratory.
Yeah,
on how to cure this disease.
What I want to know is what happens to all the other kids out there who have already been spliced. Are they just now half animal, half humans hanging out in high school? Like that one
For that
girl
matter,
at the beginning?
could you just get like a dart gun at CVS and go around and like de-animalize the bully that's bothering you at school or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Is that considered assault?
Well,
you take someone's right to be a half animal?
I probably, yeah, honestly. I mean, it gets, I don't know how much hard law has been passed and litigated about the rights of half animal, half human hybrids, but
I'm pretty sure jamming a foreign object into another human is always considered assault, whether your intentions are good or bad.
That's
or
that's fair. Yes.
I knew the answer before I said that. I was just making a joke.
But I'm a little bit surprised. I guess Cuvier. I keep wanting to say Culver, but it's not. It's Cuvier.
Right.
He doesn't show up again in the show. He showed up again, I think, once in the Batman Beyond comic. But I think they kind of might have dropped the ball a bit, like you're saying. If he showed up with a group of animal-human hybrid Batman Rogues villains, that would be pretty cool. That would be a cool another episode to do with him.
Yeah, it could be a whole arc with that stuff, honestly. Starting with that Catwoman character or whatever. Going back to something you said before, maybe the reason these episodes don't feel as full as seasons 1, 2, and 3 of the animated series, maybe it's because there's no subplot. There's nothing going on behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
And what made me realize that was the reason I like this one is because there's a subplot about Terry not getting along with Ace. And by Ace helping him sniff out the bad guy, they come to an understanding. And I thought, that's great. I wish they leaned into that a bit more and set it up at the beginning where, Ace is always barking at Terry, he won't let him in, and he's just having a hard time getting this dog to trust him. And finally, at the end, so you have an episode that's sort of essentially about a boy and a dog in the end, or the heart of it anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. No, that would have been great. And I think that was one of the things I actually did like about this is because of the Ace stuff. Because they use him in a way that was interesting and it was clever and it fit the tone of the story where they're trying to track down these animals. Well, how do they track them down? Well, they have an animal there who can track. And as opposed to using like high-tech gadgets and stuff. And that was the stuff that I liked is they just kind of took the concept and the environment that they had set up for the story and did a lot with it. Like I loved the fact that they were having the fight at the end was at a taxidermy museum.
Yeah.
So you've got all these other animals around, and it makes it more difficult for Terry to track these guys inside because there's so much other crap around that looks like.
Yeah.
I thought that was all very clever. I thought it was well handled with the time and the space that they had.
I couldn't. My brain in that scene was thinking, would I want to draw this or not? Would this be amazing to draw, or would it just be a nightmare? Because
Yeah.
I like drawing animals if I have the time. Pull out a picture of a wolf, figure out the lighting, boom, end of the day, nice wolf. But if you're drawing a wolf and a bear and a cheetah and everything in the same page, that seems like a lot.
Yeah. You need to just kind of like relax and put on some nature sounds before you dive into that for the next day.
Whatever the mix of like animal sounds and pure moods is, something with like a howl, a wolf, and a pan flute.
I bet there's, how they have those apps that let you like program in your perfect, I need to go to sleep white noise, where it's like,
Yeah.
you can put in thunder, but you can also like mix it so it's like more thunder and less cricket sounds and stuff. They should.
Yeah,
I'm sure they
that's
must
so
have
funny.
one for animal noises.
I tried one of those once. So I went to Brookstone back in the day in the mall. They have all this cool shit that
Mm-hmm.
no one needs, like all kinds of crazy massage chairs and sand and Zen gardens.
Yep.
And I bought a Sounds of the Rainforest on tape. Problem was, play it. It's got 25 minutes before you hear click, and you have to get up and turn it over, and now you wake again, right?
Yes.
What made it worse is like the whole thing. It just sounds like someone set up a tape recorder in a tent in the jungle, and it's
Oh
fine.
yeah.
But then there's this fucking bird that goes off on side B. It was just like, just got right in the microphone, and it would make me the fuck up every time. So
Nice.
when I discovered the app you're talking about, I'm like, oh great, I can say less bird, less crickets, higher noise, less cowbell, whatever. But then I realized, wait a minute, I'm not actually listening to a real rainforest. I'm listening to like a digitized loop, and it just doesn't feel as natural as I wanted it to. So I gave up on that app.
Oh sure, yeah. Oh, well, I like the I the when I was using one of those, I would program it mostly for rain. So it would be like
Yeah.
some combination of I basically had all forms of rain going at the same time, where it was like hard rain, sleet, thunder, and the sound of water like trickling down onto a hard tin roof or something. And for some reason
Yeah.
that worked, like the right mix of that
Right.
worked for me. I don't know why rain
Yeah,
works
man.
more than anything else. But then I
Yeah.
kind of like got too aware of the machine. I think probably to the sort of the same way you did, where
Yeah.
I was like, this is really cool. It worked for like a month, and then I started spatially putting the sound in my phone. So I would have the thing. I know that doesn't make a ton of sense, but like I became aware of the origin of the sound, and so I started focusing on that, which didn't allow me to relax.
Hmm.
It was
Yeah.
strange, but it was just like the fact that I knew
Yeah.
that this was coming from just above my head on my headboard, as opposed to atmospherically surrounding me as it would in real life. It made it difficult to use.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember going to North Carolina convention with you, and we shared a hotel room, and that was
Mhm.
the first time I've shared a room with you. And you had that sleep apnea device too,
Mhm.
which I might need to use one of those myself someday, for all I know. But then I think you put on Sounds of the Rainforest or something, and
Oh,
you
did
were
I?
like, "Do you mind?" I'm like, "No, not at all, actually." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm learning a lot about Clay. He's more than about wrestling and horror movies. He's he's got a whole other side to him."
I've
And
got
then
a
I remember,
whole bunch of things wrong with me too.
and then I thought, man, it's like 2 a.m. and we're still talking about comics and giggling. And I thought, this feels like some like 12-year-old sleepover. Like I just never thought that you were that guy. And I'm like, I've never seen Clay in such a funny, fun mood. Like you're always fun to hang out with, but you were just extra, I don't know, tickled that night just to be sharing a room with your favorite artist. I don't know.
Hey man, it was my first time in North Carolina. I couldn't contain myself.
I guess so. Man.
Um, speaking
I'm glad
of,
that you suggested the Sounds of the Rainforest before I did, because I was going to suggest that shit, but you did it first. So that's when I knew we'd be friends forever.
well, I'm glad it worked. I'm glad that was the bond
You
that kept us
asked,
together.
nice. And there's the scene. You ask, so I slowly slide my tape back into my backpack so you don't see it. Sure, Clay,
I,
we could do
I
that.
I take out my CD, and then you just smile and reach into your pocket and take out the exact same CD, and we just like nod.
And then we both start complaining about the fucking bird
Yeah.
at the same time. What the hell? Was that a parakeet?
Um, So the end of this episode, because we may as well jump to the end, is kind of a little bit of Akira, where Terry jams all these different animal DNAs into the Chimera guy, and turns him into this giant, blob monster. Do you think Bruce would approve of Terry's methods in this episode, where he basically murders a man?
Yeah, he doesn't know what all that's gonna do. You're right.
Yeah.
It would be like Bruce turning up the venom in Bane and watching his head explode.
Yeah, to be fair, Bruce has done that with Bane, but he just got lucky and it didn't kill the guy.
Right.
This one, it
Well,
seems like, I don't know, it seems a bit more intense, where he just turns into this giant walking cancerous tumor and then explodes like at the end of Blade.
With holes in him too. And I can't decide if that was fun to animate or they got to that scene and they were like, "Oh, Jesus Christ! I guess we're staying late tonight."
Were you afraid for Ace when he gets swatted down and then grabbed by the monster?
Yeah, I was wondering how far they would take the dog violence because I know there's rules against that.
Yeah.
I
was kind of going back to what you're talking about, the subplot. I was hoping he would have more to do at the end, because when Terry, I think we're both kind of queuing into the same thing, where it's like there are the crumbs of a really great Ace and Terry subplot, but they don't really do as much as they could, because when they send them out, when Bruce sends him out with Ace, that feels like the point. Okay, these two guys that don't get along, they now have to work together. And then once they get there, Terry's just like, wait here, I'll go handle it. And then Ace just sits, because he's a good dog, and waits until the end to jump in. I was kind of hoping Ace would be more involved.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, I got Ace in my book and I was thinking the same thing. I just have him as like, he's in the background. He licks people now and then. He doesn't really do much at all.
Yeah.
So I did figure out a way to get him involved in issue 7 or 8, finally. And he's a dog. It's not so much that he can do, but I would have loved to have had a chance for him to be needed, like for his sense of smell. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But mine just isn't that kind of story. Mostly he's just a cameo.
Yeah, I hope what you did is at the highest point of tension in the fight, you just do one page where you cut to Ace, who's just lying in the Batmobile asleep, and then his ear perks up. Yeah, his ear perks up for a second, and then he just goes back to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, they also, in my book, they find a stray living in the Batmobile, and they're like, I guess he could come. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Joker gives him a name. So it's not like he's trained or he's loyal to Bruce or he can do any tricks or anything like that. So I'm glad he's there, but I don't know. Originally, I had the ending where Bruce and Harley are working together, pulling off some final mission, and he brings Ace, and she brings Lucy, who is her hyena that Bruce bought her back in Harley White Knight.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like a family. And Harley goes, oh, maybe the two of them will fall in love and have babies. And he goes, hyenas are actually cats, right? Which is true.
Huh.
She goes, what? All these years you've been letting me talk about my puppies, this and that. You never corrected me. And he goes, between robbing banks and dating a serial killer, I didn't think you had time or interest in learning about, taxonomy. So, decent Batman kind of joke, but there's no room for it, so I had to cut it.
Yeah.
And I was surprised when I learned that hyenas are actually related to cats, not dogs.
Yeah, I would not have guessed that. They don't look like cats.
Yeah, no, they definitely.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, the other thing that I liked about this too is it gives Terry a bit more non-Batman stuff to do. Like he's hanging out with his girlfriend, and he takes those two guys down on the train, and then he uses the pretense of going to the Chimera place to get like a consultation, or convincing his girlfriend to get a consultation.
Yeah, what was that?
And then ditching her. She's kind of like mildly interested in it, and then in order for him to get in the door so he can snoop around, he convinces her to go in for a consultation, and then he just ditches her. Even to the point where they just have a shot where she looks around, she's like, Terry, and then they cut to her just walking out of the Institute by herself.
It's a lion.
Yeah, I don't know why I don't know why she keeps him around. He seems like he's dead weight.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's got other shit on his mind.
Yeah.
Um, I like that they introduced Max, the soon-to-be side character, in
Which
the one who knows Bruce's secret.
which one was Max?
She's black with pink hair.
Oh, okay. Because I saw her name in the. I was going through the IMDb trivia and it said this is the first appearance of Max. I was like, I can't remember who the hell that was. For a second, I thought it was the one girl who gets turned into the bad guy who's the more cat-like
Yeah,
character. But okay,
right.
that's interesting.
Yeah,
So
she sort of becomes like Oracle in a way, um, except she doesn't. She's not paralyzed or anything,
sure.
but she knows Terry's secret. Bruce knows that she knows, and she's sort of been able to help him, and she can run interference for him at school while he needs to leave and do stuff. So,
Oh, interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
she's a great character and definitely like a needed, a welcome addition, considering how formulaic some of the shows can feel sometimes. Having her
Yeah.
in there is really nice.
Yeah, that's nice to know because I do think. I mean, obviously, one of the big advantages of the Bat family is that it changes things up and lets you tell different kinds of stories and stuff. So that's nice that they're adding another character in eventually. But
Yeah, yeah, for
um,
sure.
did you have anything else you wanted to talk about this one? You want to go into what you would draw?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm gonna give it a 4, and I think I would draw maybe the taxonomy stuff, or sorry, taxidermy stuff.
Yeah.
Like him crawling near walking past a scary bear that's frozen in time. That kind of thing would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you?
I am also going to give it a 4. I'm going to take the cheap way out and say I'd want to draw the monster at the end, or possibly I like the Chimera guy. So here, this actually I did want to talk about this. What do you think about the Chimera design? Not the monster part, but like the first part where he's like half bird, half snake thing. Because
I thought he looked like Hawkman, but it didn't quite work when he was talking.
yeah,
Just seemed a little underdone. I would have taken another pass at that design. What about you?
yeah. The thing I was thinking is that I don't know if and maybe as we go I'll be proven wrong here and I'll take this back, but I don't know if original characters designed with this more streamlined look are really that interesting, because all of the redesigned characters look great. So like in Batman the Animated Series, when they changed the art style, when they had like the streamlined version of Joker, the streamlined version of Two-Face, the streamlined version of Penguin, all that stuff looks really good for the most part, aside from like Killer Croc. But I don't know what it is, but like there's like some of these characters who don't have iconography baked into them like those villains do. I feel like there's not enough information there to really be interesting to me, because it's he's a kind of a bird and he's kind of a snake or whatever, but I don't find it. Everything is so smoothed out that I don't really find it interesting, because you don't get any of those contrasting like textures or anything. It's just sort of like a skin colored snake with a bird face, and it's like, no, I don't know, and a couple zigzaggy lines on the shoulders.
Right. I think the angular design of this series plus season 4 of Batman the animated series, I just think it looks very plastic.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Whereas seasons 1 through 3 seemed rounded. They used a lot more smoky, airbrushed textures in the backgrounds to give it some variety. And I mean, I can see as an animator why this style's a lot easier to work
Oh,
with,
totally. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it just doesn't feel, it just doesn't feel as organic and developed as the first 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Like Killer Croc, I mean, the design was so simple but so cool at the same time. Like his design was probably simpler than that Chimera,
Oh,
but yet
definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
the Croc holds up for some reason, and maybe because I'm nostalgic, but yeah, I don't know. I can't really explain it.
Yeah. Like I liked the henchman. Well, I liked the cat lady henchman. I thought her design was really cool. The snake guy, I think, suffered from the same kind of plasticky smoothness where it's like there's not a lot of identifying features. And the iced tea guy was he was fine. You know, he's just a big dude with horns, basically. But
I like his shoes that were like hooves. His hooven high
yes.
tops. Those are pretty cool.
Yeah, the high tops that have like the Japanese toe split to make it look like hooves or something. That's cool.
There's a name for those. Dan Panosian knows what they are because he, works out in them, probably sleeps in them for all I know. Yeah, I can't remember what they're called.
I wonder what is the benefit of those? Is there a reason for that?
No idea.
Yeah,
Actually,
I'm sure there's people out there who know. So if you know, drop us a line. Let us know.
we could look it up. We're lazy.
Yeah, we
You know,
could.
I actually thought of another art question that when I ask you this, you're going to be like, "Yeah, why don't we know the answer to this?
Mm-hmm.
Why do they call it a Dutch angle?"
Oh, that's a great question.
Right? I'm sure it's got a good answer.
I have to.
Why don't you?
Maybe
All right, you look it up. I'll entertain us.
Where does the term
man.
Dutch angle come from?
I mean, was it developed in Amsterdam? Was there a camera that was crooked? It's kind
As one of its synonyms
movie?
suggests, the Dutch angle shot actually originated in Germany instead of the Netherlands. Film historians suggest the term is a mistranslation of Deutsch angle shot, which directly translates
Oh.
to German angle shot. Robert
Those Germans and their. Go ahead.
I was just say Robert Wien pioneered the shot in his 1920 horror film The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
So the Germans suddenly got into tipping the camera diagonally to give the viewer a sense of unease.
Yes.
And they had some kind of a hit in some German movie, and they're instead of calling it a Deutsch angle, because
Yeah.
they were probably justifiably racist against Germans in the 30s. It just got translated into Dutch angle, and there we are.
Yeah, like many other things, saying it correctly was the Americans were too lazy to say it correctly, so they just said Dutch because it sounds like Dutch.
Yeah.
So
You
there
guys
you
are
go.
Indians. Yeah.
Close enough. Well,
Yeah.
this isn't India. I said close enough. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for Splicers. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with Earthmover.
Oh my God. Tony?
You left me buried.
I thought you were dead.
No. Didn't want partner.
That's not true. There was nothing I could do for you, nothing. But there was Jackie. I took care of her like she was my own daughter. Isn't that what you would have wanted?
You stole her.
You want to kill me? Go ahead. I've got a lot to answer for, but for God's sakes, let Jackie go.
She stays, and you die.
No!
All right, Earthmover, directed by Dan Reba, story by Stan Berkowitz and Alan Burnett, teleplay by Stan Berkowitz. And in this one, Batman gets involved when a friend of Terry's and her adoptive father are haunted by eerie, man-shaped creatures made out of soil, and soon learns that they have a frightening connection to the girl's biological father, who was thought to have perished in a nuclear accident. So, this is one that I remember very vividly. Not most of the rest of the episode, but I remember the end, or at least the reveal, very vividly. And I always thought this was a Clayface episode. And I mean, technically, if you want to get... it's not officially a Clayface episode, but it's basically a Clayface episode. But
Right.
in my head, my memory of it was... And I think I even talked about this in the last official Clayface episode we did, when he like ends up going into the water and dissipating into the sea or whatever.
Mhm.
I thought, oh, this is where he ended up after that. He like ended up as part of the firmament of Gotham City, and then there was all the toxic waste or something. So I thought it was just straight up Clayface.
Yeah.
I had no idea it was
Yeah.
a completely different character with a completely different story.
Yeah, man. I was blown away by this one. I think this is probably as close as it gets to a 5.
Yeah,
for
that's
this,
not
series.
to ruin, but
Yeah.
this is a hard 5 for me. This was fantastic. I
Yeah.
loved it.
Oh my God. I mean, I liked it. It's not my type of episode, but I know that it is your type of episode.
Oh, yeah.
From the guy underground and his green eyes glowing, but they never move, and in the end where he gets like smashed by the dirt monster, and you can
Mhm.
see his hand and wrists like separate from the wall. Like,
Mhm.
how is that okay in a kid's show? Oh, it's a
Yeah.
dead body. Okay.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, that's got you all over it.
it's just it's so um interesting. It's so well paced out, and
Hmm.
the only thing that I don't love is I'm not huge on let's stop the story so we can tell a flashback.
I
Um
agree.
but
Yeah.
aside from that, like the mystery of the what the things are, and like they set up the relationship with Jackie and Bill, her
Yeah.
stepfather or whatever, in a way
Right.
that's like not foreboding, but at the same time you're kind of like, well, there's clearly something going on here.
Mhm.
The scene where what the hell's the guy's name? Is it Tom? What's her father's name? Is it Tom?
Tom or Tony?
Uh, it
Whatever.
is
Doesn't matter.
Tony. Tony.
Yeah.
The
Hey, Tony.
Tony, played by
Hey.
disgraced actor Stephen Collins from Star Trek 1. When he pulls the house down into the ground, I thought that was
Yeah.
awesome, and then it turns into this like weird underground maze thing. That was fucking awesome. It was
When
just
he
it was so
produces her
cool.
dad, like a spire of dirt shoots out horizontally and then lets go of her dad, and then dirt collapses back into the wall. It's like, whoa, that is awesome.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love what this guy can do. I think this should be a recurring villain, honestly. It's like being stuck inside Clayface.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought the ending was fantastic. Like the ending, I thought was like so
Yeah.
ambiguous as far as like
Mhm.
when Jackie is on her way out, and like
Mhm.
she shoots a look at Tony right
Mhm.
before everything comes crashing down, and then
Yeah.
turns away from him, and then goes away with Bill,
Yeah.
and then I'm thinking like, well, is the story that Bill told, is that true?
Mhm.
Like, because clearly Tony doesn't think it
Yeah.
was an accident. Bill says it is. They
Right.
never give you any indication whether or not one is true and the other one isn't. And
Well, Tony's never been a reader. Maybe that's what it was like in Little Italy. It was his friend who had the brilliant idea of turning this into a big company, making him a partner. And if he was really a villain, why would he make this guy a partner and then bury him underground accidentally? I think
hey,
clearly
well,
Bill is on the right side of
I
history.
don't know, because the thing that I think one of the reasons I love this is because it's the same story as There Will Be Blood, essentially. And where the guy gets killed in the oil rig thing, and then Daniel Plainview takes his son and uses his son as a bargaining chip and a PR
Mhm.
move. But like,
Yeah.
I like that there was no clear.
Yeah.
I mean, it leans more towards
For,
it was an accident, but
you don't get the dad from Wonder Years to be the voice of the bad guy. Period.
oh come on, yeah, you do. Come on,
Sure, I guess like Friday the 13th violates that rule.
yes. But I loved the way it ended. I loved that there was a little bit of ambiguity there. And she kind of clearly chooses the dad she knows over the dad who's a
Yeah.
monster. The fact
Yeah.
the fact that they kept cutting back to this creature talking, and it wasn't moving, it just had that nasty
Yeah.
grin on its face, and it's just like eyes would move.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it was awesome.
Yeah. Like, what if they had moved the eyes around? I thought, like, would that have made this better or worse? The fact that it's frozen and you're waiting for them to move and they don't probably makes it better
Yeah.
until they get really bright and he starts like using his superpowers double time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I love that, man. That's not something I would want to draw, but I'm pretty sure that's something that you're gonna draw.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The one thing where I was kind of like, this is a little bit soft, but I'm going to let it pass because the rest of the episode is so good. I don't know
Yeah.
if I entirely buy defeating him by smashing open the toxic waste containers.
Right. Yeah.
Cuz like clearly the way that they design him is to make it look like these toxic waste containers are powering him. And
Yeah.
so, if
This
you just
if this was a video game, you would know where to shoot.
right. But as I was
Yeah.
thinking about it, I was like, I mean, he can control the earth all over
Yeah.
Gotham City. So
He's
like
not dead.
there has to be some sort of more intricate involvement of his physiology with like I just started like overthinking it. And
Yeah.
of course the answer is we need to get done with this episode in 22 minutes. Just blow up the goddamn canisters and let's go. But
So Yeah. The thing is, there really is no villain in this episode, which I like. But then they make Tony the villain. They give
Mm-hmm.
him some cheap heat, basically,
Mm-hmm.
which I know is a wrestling phrase.
Sure is.
Shit. They have him kind of like confused and out of his mind. He's not speaking full sentences, so he's not really her dad anymore, and he's
Mm-hmm.
got this like, understandable anger, and then, by the end of it he comes around, obviously. It's like I wouldn't have changed a thing about it, but yeah,
Yeah.
cheap heat.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I liked the stuff with again, I think they use Terry's supporting cast pretty well here.
Hmm.
There's not a lot of Bruce in this one though, if I'm now that I'm thinking about it, right?
Yeah, it's fine though.
Yeah.
I think that they they managed to work the subplot. Like this feels like a season 1, 2, or 3 TAS episode because
Yeah.
it has a lot of the seemingly mundane stuff. With Terry being a kid, he's over a friend's house. He's helping her with homework. We sort of understand that something's up with her and her dad. Like you get a lot of good subplot stuff there that takes up equal space as the fantastic stuff, which is why I think this works so well. And like you said, it doesn't really need Batman, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, and I kind of hope that they do more of that, because as much as I do love seeing Bruce, as we were saying about the last episode, I think there is a possibility that it becomes a little bit too formulaic, where it's
Right.
something crazy happens, he goes to Bruce tells him what's going on, he goes out, the first time he tries to fight the thing, it doesn't work, and then Bruce has to give him this other thing, and then like it can get old. And I feel like, honestly, I don't know if they consciously decided to change things up in season 2, but even in season 1, I feel like towards the end we were kind of like, yeah, these are all kind of running together a little bit because they're all very similar. But these first 2 of season 2, I think, have been very different and very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'm glad to. I feel like, there's a lot of talk about how people that made this show didn't want to do it. It
Mm-hmm.
was a pitch that Bruce Timm gave in because they were like, yeah, pitch us something like, Bruce, make Batman young. And he was like, all right. And it was something that he didn't really seem to want to do.
Mm.
And they gave this to Warner Brothers, and they're like, great, green light. So they're like, oh shit, well, how are we going to do this now? So it kind of fell into this series. So I don't know, maybe that affected the enthusiasm for season 1. And now that they're doing season 2, they say they know what this is about, they know where to go. There's more passion for it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, yeah, very possibly.
Yeah.
Were you thinking that Bill was going to turn out to explicitly be a villain? Because I mean, he's not.
No.
He's technically he's not a villain in that he is a businessman who was just dumping toxic chemicals to the ground.
Okay. Yeah, he is an environmental
His hands are
criminal.
not completely clean. Let's put it that way.
But he took his buddy's daughter in. He seems to be a loving father. She likes him a lot. He tries to sacrifice himself twice to save her. He gets in a car and drives off when he realizes that it's Tony and it's after him. So he tries to spare her by taking off alone.
Yeah.
And then again in the cave, he's like, don't punish her, punish me. I have plenty to answer for. Like, that's not what a bad guy does.
True.
And he's got the voice of Kevin Arnold's dad.
Yeah, I kept waiting for the turn, though. I was expecting them to go that Tony's reading of the situation, that he had him killed on purpose, was actually true. And I think the fact that they didn't do that makes the episode better.
Okay, yeah. And that makes it also a kid's show. And what you're describing is awesome, but a little darker.
I mean, you don't get too much darker than anything else in this episode.
Having her father,
toxic
her stepdad,
waste-powered corpse talking to you from being stuck in the wall is pretty dark.
Having Kevin Arnold's father raise you under false pretenses and murdered your actual father is a lot worse.
Yeah.
But I take your point. Just saying, it could have been darker.
You're getting blinded by the casting, man. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So you would draw him hooked up to green tubes, like Clayface and Bane mixed into one character.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. I would love to do like a splash page reveal of that thing. That would be really cool.
If you ever
Um,
draw a scene that takes place underground again, which you should put an Easter egg in of this guy, just a corpse, with some little lines to it, and then have Russ put like a little bit of green on there.
yeah. Well, if when I eventually do the sequel to Bloody Hell, there might be some
Mm,
underground stuff in that, so maybe I could sneak him in there. That'd be pretty creepy.
there you go. Yeah.
If
Um,
I'd thought ahead, I could have. If we had done this 2 years ago, I could have put him into the first volume. There's plenty of mud, and half that book is bodies coming out of muddy walls. So
yeah. Um, the thing I would draw is I would redesign Batman's submarine, which I think is terrible.
yeah, I don't love it.
It's just a boring submarine with a red windshield.
Yeah,
It's got a little telescope shooting out the top, like yellow submarine as well. It's just oh God. And I like when he gets in there, there's like a bench for two people to sit conveniently. I don't know. I just would have. I feel like his Batmobile could probably go underwater, but I know that
right.
Warner Brothers wants to make new toys. But who's gonna buy? Even if that thing was made into a toy, there's nothing Batman about it.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's just black and red, which is
Yeah.
just what reads as Batman. Even though I don't
Yeah.
particularly care for those colors.
If they
in
made a
Earth
toy, they
Mover.
would just label slap some shit that they made before and just get it out there. But yeah, that's my only big criticism of the story was that the fucking sub.
Yeah, I just looked it up quickly. I don't think they ever made a toy of that. Or maybe they
Yeah.
did.
I have I'm doing issues 7 and 8 to finish up Beyond right now, and I have them assaulting the Wayne Powers building. And Powers has been making all these machines and tech and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I have them going through the bottom of the building is attached to the ocean through an abandoned submarine base. And I added that because I was like, man, I hate it when you have a battle somewhere and then you have to return to the battle scene at the finale again. Like I'd prefer a new battleground.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you mentioned too in the book that you're doing with my wife.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
so I was like, okay, well, what if they revisit the Wayne Powers building, but there's a new section to it that they've never seen before, and it's connected to the ocean. So there's like a waterborne assault that starts off with, and that gives me the chance to draw some bat boats and bat
Oh,
subs and
nice.
whatever
Yeah.
that Batman has to. Yeah. So I think it was you that got me thinking about when people recycle settings for finales, which you don't like it and I don't like it. So I was trying to
Sure.
find a way around that, even though the story's kind of set.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. Yeah, that'll be cool. I don't. Yeah, you haven't really done too many bat boats. You did the '89 Batmobile turned into a boat in Curse, right? But
Yep.
that's pretty much it, I think.
Yeah. I did the boat in the 1600s, pirate ship or
Oh,
whatever.
sure. Yes.
I know
Yep.
that doesn't count though. Um, no, I had a boat underwater in Perth as well. I had submarine that Batman was using actually. I forget the context of what the hell it was, but I remember it exploded and Batman got out of there.
Oh, okay. Well,
But
hopefully the aquatic attack in Beyond is just shot for shot the aquatic assault on Alcatraz from The Rock.
oh yeah, why not, man? What I was gonna do is have the Beyond Batmobile carrying the 89 underneath it, which I've already set up. You
Yeah.
start the issue out where they're looking down. They're like, "Oh, I only see one Batmobile. Huh? I wonder what the plan is here." And they don't know that underneath it is a second Batmobile and Terry flying. So they get close to the submarine base and they let go of the 89 Batmobile, and then it transforms in midair, lands on the water, skips into the water, jets right into the submarine station, starts blowing shit up.
Nice.
And the reveal is that Red Hood and Nightwing are working together in the Beyond Batmobile, and Bruce and Harley are in the 89. And
Ah,
there's a third, so it's like a four-pronged assault, basically. It happens all at once. It's kind of a surprise. So that's a spoiler.
you should have Batman assault the Powers building in a blimp, and then so they're like, wow, he's never used a blimp before. I wonder why he's using a blimp. And then the bottom of the blimp opens up and it just starts dropping Batmobiles like bombs onto the building. So you've got all
I
those
was with you for the
Batmobiles.
first part of that.
All those Batmobiles that you have stored in the various caves are just being thrown at the building like
Like,
explosives.
Like big Batmobile lawn darts.
Yes, exactly. So you've got like Derek Powers and what's her name, Flint, running through as like the '66 Batmobile just like bashes through the wall and sticks into the
My
floor.
God. I mean, so when I sent this issue to my editor, her note to me, God bless Brittany, she works her ass off, and I know she's underpaid and overworked, but she gets to the point where she's reading about the '89 Batmobile, and she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to check with Warner Brothers to make sure it's okay to use this one."
Mm.
And I'm like, "You're kidding me, right?" She's like, "Well, I gotta make sure it's all right for us to use movie props." And I go, "Brittany, I've been using the '89 Batmobile since the beginning of this series. I've been
Yeah.
even in this issue, even in the page before. Like, I took a picture of it. I'm like, do you not know what the '89 looks like?" And she admitted that she had a brain fart, but she says like, "Oh, come on, it's not my fault. I wasn't born when that movie came out." And I was like, "Well, I wasn't born when Batman '66 came out, but I know what the Adam West Batmobile looks like." So I don't know, whatever. It was funny, but I don't know. I guess she's more. Maybe she needs a vacation,
Yeah.
not just me.
Yes, I think probably a lot of people do. Yeah. Just to round it out, you're gonna give this one a 5?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. This is easily my favorite episode of both seasons so far.
Yep.
This and honestly, I mean, we keep using this as a measuring stick, but like this is probably the closest they've gotten to Heart of Ice in this show.
Yeah.
In that, like, it's not just an action story. There's actually some real pathos and characters with actual motivations and emotions and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I hope they can keep it up. I don't really expect them to, but I'm hoping this season, this is just a harbinger of what's to come, that the rest of the season will have some higher points than the first season.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's gonna get better.
Yeah.
At least maybe instead of every episode being a 3, maybe we'll have more 4s thrown in there. But yeah, starting this off with a 4 and a 5 is pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's
Nice.
gonna do it for these 2 episodes.
What did
Yeah.
you think? What did you think of San Diego not having been since 2006 or whatever?
It was an interesting experience for a couple of reasons. One being that I had only been there once before and hadn't been for 15 years, and 2 that I was there as a professional, which I wasn't the first time. And I mean, the whole weekend we were there. Thursday through Sunday? I think I only spent a couple hours in the show each day because of that's when we were doing our signing and stuff. And I had other stuff to do, so I didn't get a ton of time to look around. In the last day on Sunday, after we finished our signing, I had maybe 2 hours to check the show out, and then I had to leave because I was meeting a friend for lunch before we flew back. And it wasn't as crazy as I remembered it being, and I don't know if that's A, because I didn't get to look around that much, or B, because of COVID, or both, or what. But I didn't feel like it was difficult to walk around. And when I went the first time, I think I had gone. That was definitely the biggest show I had ever been to at the time, which would have been like 2006. And I've been to so many shows since then, and they're all kind of the same, that maybe that kind of bled into it a bit too, where it's like, yeah, it's a big show, but it's like San Diego didn't feel bigger than New York to me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think they're approaching equal traffic, honestly. And they both probably had to cut back the last few years just for safety reasons. And New York isn't a lot more stressful too, because you're dealing with the city. And if you're not a city person, or if you don't know New York, it's like an added stress. Whereas San Diego is very easy to, get around and walk, and it's not that big, Yeah, I mean, I haven't been for 11 years. I really wasn't really knowing what to expect, because we were kind of a last minute addition. I had a friend at I forget what the name of his company is, but he was able to hook us up with a table.
Yeah.
And
it was
we
Big
weren't
Wow.
like
Was it Big Wow that
Yes,
was hosting
thank you.
us? Yes.
Yeah, Big Wow hosted us, gave us a table last minute. So it wasn't like the convention sponsored us. It was just sort of a friend of a friend that was able to step up. So yeah, it went as well as could have expected. I got to meet Todd McFarlane for the first time face to face, so that was fun.
Yeah, I got to watch because he came over to the table, and then
Yeah.
I just
I was flattered
creepily
because
took a picture of him while you were standing there.
he was there promoting. He was there with Ozzy Osbourne
Yeah.
promoting a new line of figures, and I texted him a week before the show and saying, "Hey, can I meet you? Just tell me where you be. I'll make it easy. Like I'll do all the walking, just 5 minutes, whatever, to say hi." So he wasn't able to make that happen, but he must have told his secretary to add me to his list, and he tracked me down and said hi, and immediately started complaining about DC's marketing department. His Batman Spawn um, wasn't promoted as well as he would have liked, or at least it didn't seem like it would be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, Todd, you're jumping into my nightmare, buddy. You have no idea what I went through with White Knight. Like, yeah, I don't know what's going on either. And he's like, this book's gonna be the best-selling one shot of the entire decade for DC. I'm like, yep, probably. I mean, who wouldn't be excited for Spawn Batman? And he asked me to do a cover, which I of course said yes. And yeah, it was fun. It was like meeting a version. There's so many people and there's so few people in comics that are good at business. So when I see someone like me in a way, I'm like, oh man, I got to learn from this guy. And
Mm-hmm.
Todd is definitely one of those guys, faults and all. I really dig. I'm always willing to listen to what he has to say.
Yeah. 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 It was cool. We got to hang out with some people I hadn't seen in a while, who had moved to the West Coast. Don't make it out as much to the East Coast shows anymore.
Yeah.
Got to see Steve-O. Hadn't seen him in a bunch of years.
Oh yeah. I don't think I saw him. Was he at the DC party one night or no?
He was hanging out at the bar with us one of the nights. I forget which.
Oh yeah.
It was him
At
and
the Hyatt.
Andrew and Aaron were hanging out. Yeah.
That's right.
And yeah, I actually
meet-
I got to meet some people I had worked with but never met in person before because they were on the West Coast, which was fun.
Right.
I actually had what's the word? Scheduled meetings to talk to people, which I've never had at a convention before.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was
Yeah,
it was a very different convention experience than what I'm used to.
Yeah. We got to meet Dennis Cowan, which was awesome.
Yeah, he was so cool.
Yeah.
I just struck up a conversation with him at the DC party thing, and he just talked forever. And then I mentioned, that I was working with you, and he said to me, he goes, oh, I really want to talk to him. I was like, go talk to him. And he goes, I don't know. I'm afraid he won't know who I am. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And so after I was done, I came over to you and said, go talk to Dennis Cowan. He doesn't think you know who he is. And you were like, what? How is that possible? And then, we the three of us ended up talking, and he told us some awesome stories about Jorge Zafino and Alberto Bresci and stuff.
So you and the other two guys there was some kind of Dennis was doing some kind of program where he was helping people of color get into comics or get in with DC.
The
I don't think
the milestone initiative thing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And I hate to word it that way, but that is literally what they're doing, which is great. So I met these two kids who were younger, but one of them worked with Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah.
From Creed fame, and I was like, holy shit, man, I'm not celebrity, you are. That's amazing.
Yeah, he wrote
and he was talking
Super Bowl ads and stuff. Like I think we're all like, are you sure you want to do this? This seems like a step down.
Man, it's just like, you see how tired we all are? See how fresh? So he was telling me too that he was meeting Dennis. I'm like, oh man, Dennis is here. And he's like, yeah, man. He said the same thing. He wants to meet you, but he's afraid you won't know who he is. And I'm like, I know who Dennis is. Jesus Christ. So I went over to Dennis and I was like, hey man, and for people that don't know, he's got a real loose inking style. And he was actually featured in a few advertisements for watches and some, I don't know if it was Rolex or what.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the 80s, you can see magazine ads with Dennis as the model, wearing the watch or whatever the hell he was selling. And I don't know why what the point of those were, but that's back when illustrators used to be celebrities, like Bob Peak and all that.
Sure.
At least in my mind, that's what it was. So I go up to him, and the first thing I said to him, I was like, hey, man, remember that advertisement you did? He turns to me, and he's like, yeah. And I go, remember that really awesome 80s sweater you had in that ad? And he's laughing. He's like, yeah. And I go, was that your sweater, or did they give you that to wear? And he's like, unfortunately, it was mine. So, yeah, we got along great at that point. And we were talking about, people we knew and different philosophies and, politics and comics and trying to boost representation and all that stuff and all that. He's a great guy. And politically we seem to align a lot. And then he went into a Zafino story, and that's when I stopped him and I grabbed you. I'm like, Clay, you gotta, because I know whatever he's about to say is going to be amazing. So you might as well. So I pulled you out of whatever conversation you were having, and he told us how he hung out with Zafino, and he was there and he didn't speak a lot of English, but he knew who Dennis was and loved his stuff. And they went over to where Zafino was working, and they showed him looked at all these pages, and they were amazing. And Zafino was just giving these pages away, just the sweetest, polite, gentle guy. Um, and they swapped art, and they got along ever since, even though they spoke different languages and all that. And yeah, do you remember anything else about the story that stood out? Forget.
I think it was one of those things. I believe it was Zafino was hanging out at the offices. I must have been DC, and like no one was really paying attention to him, and so Dennis knew
Everyone's
who he
fired.
was. Yeah, Dennis knew who he was, so he struck up a conversation, and I think he ended up having Zafino and his wife over for dinner.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah, and then afterwards they were kind of like looking at work and stuff, and he opened his portfolio and just pointed at Zafino pointed at his own work and just said pick. And and Dennis was like, "What? I'm sorry, what?" But, he told another great story about being at a bookshop in France and stocking up on books by French illustrators or non-American illustrators, and came across an Alberto Breccia book. And when he went to check it out, the guy goes, he's standing right over there. And he's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, he's right behind you." And so he turned around, and Breccia was just hanging out in the bookstore. And so he talked to him for a while, and got a.
And he said, my student, and Dennis is like, "Who?" And he goes, "Zafino.
Yes,
he's a student of mine."
Yes. Yeah.
So we're talking Spanish to Italian to English for this triangle conversation to happen. Which but they all knew each other. They spoke the language of art,
right?
I should say.
Yeah, and I guess Brescia did a sketch in the book that Dennis brought. That Dennis bought, and he didn't know what it was at first, and then he realized it was a self-portrait of Brescia drawing at the drawing table that he just whipped out in the bookstore, and he said it was unbelievable. So
that's insane, man.
Yeah.
It's because Dennis draws so loose too. You and I would be happy to meet Kevin Nolan or any legend, Simonson, but Palin is from the school of let's make it messy and somehow make it work at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
And going with that mentality means you run the risk of it going off the rails.
Yeah.
So you're scribbling, you're making all these crazy marks, and you're not always controlling your brush. You don't need clean lines, but somehow it works out. And it's just the weird mentality of people that go down that road, and how I love it, you love it, he loves it, Zafino loves it, obviously. And it's just so different of an approach than what Adam Hughes is known to do, So it's always cool talking to people that are of that mindset.
Yeah. For me, it's always been like, there are certain people who are really great at that more formalized and constructed and perfect styling. Like our buddy Joe is amazing at it. But to me, it's like the number of times that you have to. Anytime I've tried to do something like that, which is like, all right, I've done this sketch. I want to transfer the sketch as closely as possible. So I'm going to light box it exactly, and then I'm going to go from there, and that's going to be a tight drawing. I'm going to tight ink it. For me personally, I always end up losing something, like some energy or life just gets drained out. And also I kind of find it boring of just drawing the same thing exactly the same way over and over again. So that's why I've always been drawn to the more messy kind of like, you're kind of riding the edge of whether or not this is actually going to work. Sometimes
I don't know what I'm doing here right now.
Yeah,
I don't know why I have this much ink on the brush.
Sometimes it doesn't work, but when it does, it's fantastic.
Yeah. I feel like I used to take more chances, and inevitably, when you're doing something over and over, you're just gonna get better and tighter at it. You're gonna find, ways to control it more easily. Even though it looks messy. Like with the way Sienkiewicz inks or draws, and you're like, you don't know what he's doing until he lifts his pencil, and suddenly it all comes into focus. So is it chaos, or it just looks like chaos from the outside? Who knows?
Yeah, I find myself sometimes rebelling against my own formality when I draw now, where if I'm being too uptight about things, there's something in my head that clicks and goes, this isn't the kind of artist you are. Put some fucking ink on that brush and do something crazy. And then I'll do it and I'll go, I don't know if that worked, but I got to figure it out now. So there's always something inside me that's like, when I get too tight and too concerned about perfection and perfect lines and stuff, there's always something inside me that wants to just blow it up.
I was looking at some of the tools that Ashley Wood is using now, and it's that brush/pen you use. It's like a calligraphy pen.
Oh yeah, the parallel pen.
Really
yeah.
wide, and it's like a good building window brush. As
Yeah.
you put it.
Yeah, those things are awesome. I love using
Yeah,
them.
and it dries really dark too, so it doesn't even when you erase it, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I started using that. I've actually been using that a lot more for it's like the main tool that I use. And you get some really interesting lines out of it. And I need to, the thing I've been trying to do with it is try to use the pen for what it can do more than a replacement for other tools, if that makes sense. So like, even though it can make fine lines, it's like, well, is that really what I'm doing? What I'm using this for is to get a fine line out of it, or am I using it to get something kind of interesting? So I've been trying to dial it in with that thing to see if I can figure out a way to use it that is playing to its strengths, while not just me being too lazy to use a dip pen.
Yeah. Tools like that work if you're inking alleyways, sewers, dark jackets, wrinkles, trees. But if you're trying to draw a car in perspective, racing down the street, you got to be careful with that tool. That you need some things to be clean and clear and straight. Other things can be a mess, but it works.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I use a calligraphy nib a lot more than I used to, but it's only on certain objects, not everywhere. And sometimes I'll be like, I can ink a face with this, and I'm like, whoops, all right, time to make a patch.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's also, I find that you can only be so fine with those things until it's beyond the ability of what the pen can really do. So you just gotta know when to use it and when you might need something else to take the place for whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah, for sure.
I
sort of related to the Batman animated series.
Mhm.
I wrote to Paul Dini yesterday.
Oh, cool.
Asking him if he two things I was curious to see if he wanted to do. One was just to say, hey, I've got sorry, I have an airplane going over me right now. I love this house, but we're right in the middle of where planes come into land, the main airport. So I said, I've got my own universe. I'd love to work with you if you want to write me a script, like a 2-issue, something small. If you had an idea, something that you'd want to do with one of your animated series characters that DC won't allow you to do, like if you wanted to do a death story with Mr. Freeze or Clayface, you could do whatever you wanted. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to do or whatever, if you had any ideas, but I would, open door policy, man. Anytime you want to pitch me something like that, like I'm pretty sure DC will do whatever you want.
Sure.
And the other thing I wanted to see if you wanted to do was Darkwing Duck with me. I was talking to a friend who sells art, and he's like, man, a lot of art in Europe, they buy arts with ducks on them. I'm like, you're right. There is a lot of that over there. And he goes, yeah, Disney never stopped publishing Donald Duck comics. Even to this day, some of these great artists are drawing Uncle Scrooge and shit like that, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I was like, huh. And I go, what if I did Darkwing Duck? Just 'cause I know the art would be worth a lot. It's kind of Batman. It's kind of dark. It's got ducks in it. And I'm like, man, I like Darkwing Duck, but I don't know what I have to say in 48 pages about
Right.
Darkwing Duck.
Right.
And I thought, who might is Paul Dini, because he used to write for Tiny Toons, I think. So this is like the best of both worlds. So I looked into who owns Darkwing Duck. I think it's Dynamite. And assuming Paul says yes, I think I am going to see if they're interested in having us do a one-shot.
Well,
Maybe just,
I think Darkwing Duck is a Disney property.
It is, but I think the comic book rights are currently owned by Dynamite.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting.
Boom had them for a while. Like when Darkwing made its big comic book reappearance back like 10 years ago, that was a Boom comic.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, I honestly did not even realize they were making Darkwing Duck comics.
No, they're not. So they're not doing anything with it. I think they had plans for 2023, but it fell through. But now I'm thinking if I pitch them just to do a one shot, having me and Paul do something would be I don't think they'd say no.
Yeah, I
And
mean that's a tough team to say no to, I think.
for me, it would be cool. I would keep my backgrounds the same, but for trying to come up with like a Disney style of my own, that would be so weird and hard to do. But I think it'd be fun challenge.
Yeah, that would be very neat. I
But
I would love to see. I would love to see what he comes up with for that if it's something that he agrees to do.
yeah, that's kind of the idea. I don't know. I mean, I told him that I basically retired from working with writers, and I only write my own stuff now. But if there's someone I would come out retirement for, it's a very grand way of saying it. But I would definitely love to work with the guy that co-created Mr. Freeze and all that stuff that we love.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
But
Yeah.
because most of our income comes from original art sales now, anytime I do a project, I sort of am thinking about, can I sell these pages?
Right. Yeah.
So I have the honor. I'm not complaining. I'm honored to have this problem, but I have to think about titles that I think I could sell. So could I do RoboCop? Yeah, but would those pages sell? Probably not, unfortunately. But if I do Judge Dredd, yes, those will sell.
Right.
Hellboy would sell. Darkwing might sell. Like there's a handful of things that I know would be as valuable as Batman. Meta Barons in Europe would probably sell. So it's probably like 20 different titles that I think I could make work as much as Batman would. But
Mm.
generally, everything else is probably not going to be as valuable for obvious reasons.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you got a whole other side of the big two you could explore if you find a way to get over there.
I mean, if I could ever do a Marvel book, uh, you were the one that pointed out the Alex Ross Fantastic Four, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So I checked into that.
oh, cool.
It's I can't remember who published it, but it's
Abrams.
licensed from Abrams. Okay, so they licensed it from Marvel to do that,
Hmm.
and I'm looking into that to see if I can just do a Gambit book with Abrams, and Marvel doesn't have to know about it until it just hits the shelves. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But
You might need to pick a character a little bit more high profile than Gambit, but
no, fuck you, Gambit Hot Pink. I've been after that for a while. That's my.
but yeah, I had heard that Alex Ross book was something that he had been wanting to do for a long time, but Marvel just kept saying no, and so
Right.
he ended up going to Abrams and kind of bypassed them a little bit and put it out. And it's awesome. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
It's my
Why would they say no to Alex Ross book?
I don't know. It's probably my favorite thing I've seen from him in a long time.
Yeah.
Because he's going full blacklight poster Jack Kirby in that book. It's very cool.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, he's not painting the whole thing. Like there are some spots where I think he's done painting, but it's mostly, I think it's digital color over his pencils, and his
Okay.
pencils are so tight that you can,
Yeah.
you could just do that all day, and I think it looks great.
Yeah. I love his pencils. I would prefer his pencils than his paintings, honestly.
Sure, yeah, yeah,
Seeing his sketches, like I'm like, man, I would love to see this guy get inked by Sienkiewicz and then put a book out that way. Like, why does everything have to be painted? And
right,
I
yeah,
respect how hard it is to paint, but I'm like, it could be faster that way. It could, Alex could reinvent himself and have a whole new thing or whatever.
especially with
Um,
like, I mean, unfortunately, the last year or so is emphasizing this to a unfortunate degree, but with so many legends who are towards the end of their lives,
yeah.
it would be, and with Alex Ross's style being so rooted in like classic Marvel, it would be really cool to see him inked by some more classic inkers.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
Sienkiewicz would be really cool.
Mhm.
Like anybody like Scott Williams or
Yeah.
any of the guys that worked in the night. They're obviously not close to dying, but you know what I'm talking about.
I was gonna say, I know we lost JP, but if he inked Alex Ross, that'd be awesome. But I think JP should just ink himself. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously it's too late for that. But
yeah. Well, I
yeah,
guess the
those kinds
closest
of
they came.
styles.
I was just gonna say the closest they came was probably Earth X, but I don't think they ever worked. I don't think they ever worked on
Yeah,
each other's art. I think it was just Alex was just writing that one. I think.
yeah, yeah. That's what's nuts to me about people who don't know who JP. How do you do a book as big as Earth X? There's many characters in the mythology that book encompassed, and then he sort of falls off most readers' radar. That
Yeah,
to me is just so weird, you know?
yeah, yeah. It always. I mean, his art
Yeah,
always stood out anytime I came across it, and I did always
yeah,
wonder why he didn't. I mean, it's not. it's not the most mainstream looking stuff in the world.
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, in the early 2000s when you had what Alex Maleev was doing on Daredevil and Michael Lark and stuff like that, all those guys were kind of playing in the same sandbox to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And those guys were doing the biggest books on the shelves.
So Maleev was one of the first to use digital backgrounds. He would take photos of buildings and then run filters in Photoshop over them.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I think it looked great. And I was like, I felt so defeated because I'm like, man, I'm never going to be able to draw a background that well. And then I realized he was cheating. And I was like, oh, thank God. Okay, good. There's no one out there that's actually capable of drawing that. Awesome.
A friend of mine actually at New York a handful of years ago bought one of his pages from Daredevil. It was a fight scene between Daredevil and Gladiator, I think. And the drawings of the fight were done on like an 8.5 by 11 like small kind of piece of paper, but it was listed as, oh, this is the original art from that page. And my friend was like, what? And it was because all the backgrounds were digital. And so he had just done the figures and then pasted them in afterwards, which, you get it done however you can. I mean, it looks great.
Absolutely. But don't expect full price for the artwork. Like,
right.
Even when I stat a page, if I have to paste a page in Photoshop, I have someone wrote me yesterday and they said, I want to buy this Tokyo Ghost page, but I think the last panel is a stat. And I said, 100% it is. So you're getting 5 out of 6 panels. And the seller should tell you that. But I'd make a point to try to do that as little as possible because it always, when I'm reading a comic and I see a repeated panel, I have to stop and look at every line to confirm that it's been, and like every tick mark, every little line on the nose, like, is it? Yes, it's a stat. So I'll redraw that shit as close as I can just because I'm a maniac and I hate myself.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I always looked at it. I don't honestly have a problem with it because, tell the story how you want to tell the story, and comics move so fast that you got to do what you got to do to get your books done. But I always, anytime I see that, there's a part of my brain, it's the same part of my brain that tries to figure out how like special effects or magic tricks are done, where it's just like, I'm like, are you going to be able to fool me by making me think that this is not just a photocopy of the previous panel?
Yeah. Was that a scrub or was it actually someone being shot?
Yeah. There's I remember, I remember I picked up, what the fuck is it? Wolverine and Havoc Meltdown, the book that from the early 90s or late 80s that Kent Williams and John J. Muth drew or painted. It's fucking awesome. But I was flipping through it and I was like, man, there's actually a lot of reused panels in this. And I don't blame them because full painted comics are a beast. But there were some in places where I was like, oh, clearly they, he drew the splash shot of Wolverine, and then like 3 panels later they needed a close-up for Wolverine, so he just used a zoomed in shot of the splash panel and just put it down there. And like unless you have an eye for that stuff, you're probably not going to notice it. But I was surprised that it always stands out to me when people do that. And I mean I've done it too, so I'm obviously not I'm not judging. But
no, this is what musicians do. I mean, if a musician hears of a new band, he's listening to are those drums real or is that a drum machine?
Right, sure.
And they put on their professional baseball hat and they switch into a different mindset. They can't help it.
Yeah.
I think Havich did that too with a lot of his interior stuff. It's just repeating panels, zooming in, whatever. And, it never, for his stuff, because it's so intricate, it never took me out of it. But when artists do it and they have a very plain, simple style, I don't know why you don't just move the camera around and reframe the shot so you have a full page of art to sell. But if you're all digital now, it's just that much easier just to cut and paste as much as you want. Like, I love what Simone DeMeo did on Red Hood, but there's a lot of reused faces and close-ups and stuff like that because that's what he needed to do to get it done, which is fine.
Right, yeah.
But it's hard for me to allow myself to do that because for me it feels like cheating.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, you are focused on having a full page to sell, and so obviously if you're doing that, it makes it incomplete.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about Red Hood at all before we wrap it up?
Yeah. So it's all finished. We the secret is out is that Simone didn't end up drawing the second part of it.
Yeah. Yep.
He fell behind. He had a wedding to finish up, so we had to find a different artist whose name is
George Cambadias.
Timodias. There you go. Yep, George has got a slightly different style, but he tried really hard to match Simone, which is hard because Simone's stuff is so unique. But I was looking online at reviews, and like I could tell the switch. But I don't know if most reviewers could tell, which makes me wonder why I bother trying to draw good at all.
I saw some reviews that didn't notice and said that it was pretty seamless, but I did see a couple other ones that actually their biggest problem was that the change in art was so jarring. So I think it's personal preference or whatnot, but it seemed to be received pretty well, the series as a whole. I was very happy with the response to Gan as a character. She seemed to go over pretty well with a lot of people.
Oh, 100%. I got no negativity from her at all. I think that if I was the type of artist who was still on Twitter and pushing culture war stuff, then the trolls might have come after us for Gan. But because I'm not, I just think it wasn't fun for them, so they just moved on.
Well, I saw one review, I think it was YouTube, I can't remember, where the guy was reviewing it and he was like, and then I turned the page and here we go, body positivity Robin. I mean, come on, what are we even doing here? And then by the end of the review, he was like, but actually, she was pretty cool, and I actually really liked her as a character. And I was like, yeah, shut up. Just read the damn book and just leave that shit at the side. We're just telling the story here, man.
So I could talk about this for an hour, but there's the new, you know what fan baiting is?
I think that's a new one to me.
It is, and it's important. It started with the all-female Ghostbusters. Studios noticed they were getting trolled. Maybe wrongfully so, maybe rightfully so. I mean, sending rape threats to actresses is obviously not cool.
Yeah, I'm going to say wrongfully so.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to argue about that, but.
No. No, I'm kidding. So I noticed that with the new Lord of the Rings, I watched it. I thought it was a little boring, but I did not notice that there were black characters and there were interracial marriages. I don't know. Maybe I'm so evolved that I just don't see it anymore. But I certainly didn't think it was woke and pushing things in my face. Like, haha, you voted for Trump, but you're going to hate this.
Right.
I thought it was fine. But when they did the press releases, the actors and the directors and the entire show went out of their way to attack neckbeards and say, we're going to check politics and we're going to they triggered the culture war stuff. They purposefully did it. And it must have been they almost had to have planned it because the minute they did an interview, the marketing team for the movie hit Twitter with these things. So they were ready, like they were trying to stoke outrage. I'm guessing from Trump supporters by saying, see, the racists don't want you to have this show. So now we're getting attention. And they think they're driving clicks and sales and marketing for the show. But I don't think it's working because if the show isn't good, then who gives a shit?
Right.
But you'll notice that a lot of marketing now is like trigger marketing where they're trying to find outrage because they think that people arguing about something on Facebook and Twitter means there's more engagement, which means there must be more views and more sales at the end of the day. But if that's what they're doing, if you're hiring black actors to shove it in the face of so-called racists and say, see, we hired a black person, like, aren't you mad? Aren't you mad? That's racist to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like shouting the N-word, but it's on the other side. Like, guys, what are you doing here? Like, I think that their intentions were probably noble, but I think we've crossed a weird line here. And fan baiting is this phenomenon that I can't wait for it to fizzle out because it's starting to be very noticeable what they're doing. And to get back to Red Hood, I didn't do that with Gan at all. I did do that accidentally with Terry when I said, oh, this is the first half Asian half Asian Batman. And I didn't do it thinking I was going to start a big argument. I did it, it just slipped out because it's not even a big deal. It's not really a part of the story at all, But because I did that, people, conservatives most likely, got their hackles up and they're like, oh, there's another woke thing out there. Let's jump on this. And a bunch of YouTube videos attacked me. Um, a lot of them didn't because I know I'm not really that guy. I'm not really out there trying to do a lot of woke stuff on the nose like some other people in comics. So when it came to Gan, I didn't do anything, and we got almost no grievances out there, which
Right.
I think is really interesting. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if that is the stuff that they're actively doing, yeah, that's not great.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, you can almost track it, man. It's kind of scary, disturbing, and it's not just with Lord of the Rings. There's a couple other things they did, which I think Sandman they tried it with. Like they're convinced by pissing people off and getting them talking about it that they're going to spend more money going to see the movie or the show, whatever it is.
hmm
But people in those mobs aren't always your audience. They're not spending money. Like they'll retweet the shit out of this. At
Well,
the end of the day, they're not going to, you know.
the thing I was wondering is if it if it came down to marketing realizing that, all the people that really hate this for all these reasons, they're still watching the show because they need to be able to bark about it. So we're
Yeah.
going to get them either way. So,
Yeah. But
But,
that's fine. And there's a version of fan baiting that might actually lead to higher sales for all I know. If you want to play some game theory, maybe this does work, but I don't think there's any evidence for it so far. In fact, I think it has the opposite effect because it just annoys people and they switch off before they even give something a chance, you know? Like all those
Yeah.
people that might love your Lord of the Rings might have been more open-minded to it because you like planted these mines and you preemptively called them racists. So now their hackles are up and are some of them assholes? 100%. But you might have actually won some of them over with your product if you hadn't opened your mouth and said those things, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a tough call only because I don't know the chicken and the egg of it all. Like I don't know which one of those things starts first, if it is preemptive or if it is reactionary.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's probably someone out there who has metrics that could figure it out. But like,
Yeah.
I think across the board, it's just a dumb fight to have because like,
Yeah.
why is this still something that anybody cares about in the year 2022?
You know?
You know?
But I mean, you could argue Disney did it with Star Wars with the Asian character that people don't like this because they don't like Asians or they don't like this they don't like this the black antagonist that's her name from
Oh, and Obi-Wan?
thank you.
Yeah.
They purposefully went out there and got ready for trolls. Like they almost created their own trolls in order
Well, I
as
mean,
part of their marketing plan. It's
but
like,
at the
guys,
same
these
time,
people
though,
they love Lando Calrissian. They're like, are you sure they're really racists? I mean, yeah, I don't know.
At the same time, though, yeah, they were ready for it because they expected it to happen, which it did. Whether or not they set it off is up for debate. But it's like criticizing them for being ready for this, I think, is a little disingenuous because it's not like it's something that doesn't happen, you know. And it did happen, and they had their responses ready for it because, just in case.
So you're right. This is a question of is it the chicken or the egg? It's a very good way to put it. And with Star Wars, you might argue, oh, they got this reaction even though they didn't lead with it. They still got this reaction. But Star Wars trans have been triggered for 15 years now, or maybe you could even argue 20 years back into the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Different set of, I mean, that's a whole other game. Whereas it comes to the Lord of the Rings stuff, you can see a trend where the marketing did plan this. And you look at all the interviews they did, they went out of their way to mention the race thing. Like they were creating their trolls because they thought it would help get attention.
Yeah,
in a
I don't
way,
know.
you know?
I'm so unsure of that because like on the other hand, I can understand why you would want to point out that you have a more inclusive cast because maybe there are people out there who aren't watching Lord of the Rings stuff because it's just a bunch of white people with pointy ears, you know?
Right.
So I can understand why, if you're doing something different, why you want to lead with that. I don't know where the line is, where it becomes, where it goes from, we are trying to, regardless, what it all comes down to is it's just marketing. So it's like, it's as cynical as you want it to be because all they're trying to do is sell a product that cost Amazon $1 billion, and if it doesn't work, they have said it might shut down Prime in its entirety. So I think you can be as cynical with it as you want. But yeah, I don't know. It's just
it feels like
I think honestly, I feel like it's worse that if this is baiting, I feel worse that people are out there taking the bait. because it's
Oh, yeah,
just
100%.
like, I don't understand why it's still a thing. And if nobody took the bait, then they would, if this is what they're doing, they'd probably stop doing it.
Right, yeah. And I think there's always going to be assholes out there and racists out there. And they would probably have their little comments to say about Lord of the Rings. But maybe those comments would have been at an 8. But because of the way you went about marketing, now they're all at 11. And it's worse now. And it's not helping the problem. If your goal is to normalize putting black people in Tolkien movies, just do it and don't pat yourself on the back about it. Just put it in there, let the show be good, and let the cards fall where they are. I mean, that's the thing, is like, it's not normalized when you're drawing attention to it. But I know why you want to draw attention to it, because you feel like, Hollywood's been bad about inclusion, and you want to try to make the effort. You want people to see they're making an effort. Like, I really do understand both sides on this one,
Yeah.
I'm not siding with the racists at all, but I know that they are worse when you pick the hornet's nest like this,
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's interesting.
that's-
I mean, I feel
that's-
like whoever has Lord of the Rings they think that mostly white people watch Lord of the Rings, and mostly a lot of nerdy neckbeards watch Lord of the Rings. And they thought, not only by including black actors in this, not only can we do the right thing, of course, but we can lead with this, and then maybe black people who haven't seen Lord of the Rings will start watching Lord of the Rings. That's probably a conversation they had in there. And I don't know if it's true or not. I know a lot of black people who love Lord of the Rings, the originals as well, so it's really fascinating, the game theory that's going on here. But I also think that what they're doing can make it worse sometimes, and they won't acknowledge it. They just see themselves as the victims. Like, oh, the trolls. I mean, we never would have thought they'd be so upset about this. It's like, well, when you did your marketing that way, it seems like you wanted them to get upset at you.
Yeah.
You thought that, you sort of discovered this new way of marketing with Ghostbusters 2016. And you thought, oh, these trolls have the ability to spread information. What if we trigger them and get them to spread information about our product? And hopefully I think that they thought that was a thing they could do, but I'm not sure it's actually working.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree that there's probably that sort of strategy in there somewhere where it's like, I mean, it works. What you're doing is, if that is what they're doing, they're treating pop culture like politics, where they're expecting that if the message is loud, that there are a certain segment of people that hate it for one reason, then that is going to, by proxy, trigger the people who are anti that message to go out and support it, which I don't think works as well as in entertainment as it does probably in politics, because at the end of the day, we're talking about elves and not like reproductive rights or voting rights,
or a black Little Mermaids, Clay. Come on, that's a big deal.
Oh God, that's the dumbest. The dumbest one of these I've ever seen is people getting upset over that. That is the stupidest shit.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, we don't want to. We've talked about this enough. But yeah, man, is there anything else you need to talk about, or?
No, I think that's it. I don't know when this is going to come out. I don't know if this is going to be out before New York Comic Con or after. But if before, come by and see us both at New York Comic Con. And if after, thanks for stopping by and saying hi at New York Comic Con. But
I hope that one day people come up to you and start. People quote your podcast to you at shows yet?
Dude, I had one guy in San Diego come up to me, and like he pointed at me 2 places down from the line, in line at our table, and he was like, "Rotten Horror Picture Show, I love your horror movie podcast, man." I was like, "What?" It was the first time, like I've had badass people come by and say how much they like the show, blah blah blah. I've had some Star Trek people. He was the first Rotten Horror Picture Show fan I've met in the wild, where he was like, "Oh my God, you and Amanda, so great. I've watched so many movies and stuff." And I actually said, "Can you say all of that again for me on camera so I can send it to her?"
I remember this. Yeah, we were sitting and signing together. I remember that moment. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, it was nice to meet someone who the reason that I wanted to do the show was people like this, where it's like, they're interested, they want to see some stuff they haven't seen before and hear people talk about it. So it was very very cool to meet that guy, and hopefully hopefully more. I'm always happy to talk about the stupid stuff that I do. So but cool. I think that's going to do it for us for this episode. Thank you guys for listening. We will be back next time with Joyride and Lost Soul.